Good evening. Pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act, Public Law 1975, Chapter 231, the Board Secretary caused notice of the meeting to be given to the public and the press on January 7th, 2019, revised on July 16th, 2019. Mr. Clark, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Delia? Mr. Donner?
Here.
Mrs. Gamarikian?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Mr. Munoz? Mrs. Rubin?
Here.
Mrs. Saha?
Here.
Mrs. Turnbull?
Here.
Mr. Silverstein?
Here.
I move to suspend the rules of order of business of the regular meeting and adjourn to closed conference session for the following reasons: matters protected by attorney-client privilege and grievance hearing.
Moved by Mr. Miller, seconded by Mrs. Gamarikian. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. We're enclosed.
Oh, yeah. I move approval to reconvene to the regular meeting agenda of the Board of Education.
Moved by Mr. Miller, seconded by Mrs. Turnbull. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. We are back in regular session. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Clark, any communications?
Just a couple items for the board. New Jersey School Board Association, their semi-annual delegate assembly is November 23rd. The notice for resolution cutoff, that date is September 19th. If you have anything you want to submit, let me know and I will send it in. New Jersey School Board Association School Board Notes, July 23rd and August 7th were both part of your packet. Garden State Coalition News and Notes, July 15th, 19th, and 29th. They were all part of your packet. And National School Boards Association National Connection Daily, July 15th to August 8th. They are all part of your packet. And
Sorry, finish.
no, that's okay. What is that for?
That's the wrong date.
On the minutes, Mark just pointed it out. You actually have tonight's date, but it really should read July 15th.
15.
Okay, so we'll make that correction on
And I'll read it
on the
in.
agenda. Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
I move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of July 15, 2019.
Moved by Mr. Miller, seconded by Mrs. Gamarikian. Any discussion on the minutes from the last meeting, not tonight's meeting? All right. All in favor? Aye. Let's do this one more time with feeling. All in favor? Aye. There we go. Opposed? Any abstentions? One abstention, two abstentions. So Paula and Scott abstain. Yes. So all those voting, having voted in the affirmative, motion passes. Mr. DeVino, Superintendent's report.
First item I wanted to bring up is that we have been in receipt of preliminary scores for 2019, and there's been some growth shown, particularly at the third grade level. Third grade did extremely well.
This group, the third grade group, has experienced iReady, our assessment, for 2 years now. So I'm hoping they'll get better. But ELA and math for third grade was very, very good for the preliminary.
So we're obviously monitoring the impact of having scores as far down as first and second grade to be able to track student progress on New Jersey student learning standards. But these, again, are preliminary scores, and we will probably not going to get the full-scale scores until October, is my guess.
So when you say preliminary scores, is this where they give us kind of district scores or grade level scores, but not individual scores, or do you have preliminaries
What we get
individually?
is, what Erica's had to dive into is an alphabetical list by grade.
But they don't give us the report for each kid, just
Well, you get the individual student report, but it's preliminary because not all kids are included. So students that may have taken the test because they were absent, their scores may not be included because they took a makeup, or there are some places that will question certain aspects of the test, and so the preliminary score can change up or down
Can be
as a
rescored.
result of a rescoring. But you get a preliminary score, which gives you really an overview. You can make generic judgments, and as Erica mentioned, by looking at our iReady scores, we're able to track an individual student's progress because of the 80%, 82% correlation. So we had certain anticipations of them in third grade. Now, when we get the final scores and we take a look at how they do when all the scores are complete and in place, we'll have a better understanding of how well iReady has informed our instructional practice at grade 1 and grade 2, moving into grade 3, and how that hopefully will continue 4, 5, and so on. As long as they stay with, and I do believe, although there is talk, they've been talking about a new test company, in which case it all goes out the window and you start all over again.
So from parents' perspectives, they shouldn't anticipate getting student reports. They shouldn't anticipate getting student reports sometime
Until
October-ish, which is, I guess, probably a little earlier than last year, but not quite as early as they had hoped to get them out.
I kind of think that what they're running into is, regardless of how pristine the use of technology is in cutting through all this stuff, when you have a questionable area, a question that is being contested because of the nature of the question, by the time they get through that process of determining how they're going to handle it, everything gets held up. For example, we have to do all of the teacher evaluations for last year. Well, they were all done. They were all coded in place. But we can't finalize that report until teachers in grades 3 through high school that have testing. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, algebra, geometry, and English 9, 10, 11, and algebra 2. All of those teachers get SGPs. Those aren't put into the system until the final scores are evaluated, and then everybody's score gets done sometime October and November. So that's kind of why it comes later, but at least generically now, they're giving us this early report, which gives us a global perspective, but really not finite enough to really pinpoint issues. We can say, ooh, it looks good. Then we're going to be able to see how good it really does look when we get the final scores.
Yeah, the other question I wanted to ask, I know we're at that time of year again, when parents need to go through the registration or update process, and I know you guys are getting ready to send that stuff out, so if you can just update everybody on that.
Last year, that information was sent out on August 19th, I believe. We are currently, as a matter of fact, we discussed it in Cabinet today. We're in the process of pulling together for previous users of OnCourse a refresher so people can go in and follow it, and for new OnCourse individuals, a full-scale explanation of what they should be doing to register and make sure that we have all the pertinent information for their children. Our expectation is it will be available sometime around the 19th again. So we're in the process.
Very specific.
Yes, we're trying to make it simpler and simpler and more explanatory. And,
Thank you.
And the last item, I would like to introduce to you our Human Resources Director in Waiting, a recent mom, as of July 31st, correct? Miss Dana Kelly. I would like to, I'll say a little bit about her, and then I'm going to ask her to step up and just kind of introduce yourself, tell everyone a little bit about yourself. But Dana was an impressive interview. She is a resident of Springfield, and as a matter of fact, walking distance from this building. And I guess the most impressive thing I can say, besides the fact that I was blown away during the interview, I did her background check, and I spoke to the principal that she worked for. I've done background checks 15 years, 16 years in New Jersey, another 10 or so years in New York. I have never been on the phone for more than 10 minutes or so in verifying. We were on the phone over half hour, almost 45 minutes. This man couldn't get out of his way. Just platitude upon platitude regarding Ms. Kelly's approach to her job, her work. One of the first things she did when I told her that she was going to be presented to the board, and she contacted me and let me know she read our entire policy manual, page by page, to become familiar with the district policies. So with that, Dana, why don't you step up and introduce yourself? Press the side, and then
That is the
front one.
first test.
All right, is it on? Okay, good. Hi, everyone. First off, I just want to thank everyone for the opportunity. Mr. Davino, that was very humbling. Thank you. I appreciate and spoke to Mr. Garrison, that's the principal Mr. Davino was just speaking of. And I owe a lot to Newark Public Schools and Mr. Garrison, my prior principal, for giving me the opportunity to grow in the field of education, which, happily brought me here today. So a little bit about myself. I started in education 13 years ago. I was a teacher in Jersey City, where I started as a middle school social studies teacher. A couple years after that, I tipped my toes into high school, where Hackensack Public Schools saw me presenting at Texpo and a couple of other local conferences and wanted to scoop me up, and I know that I needed to get some higher education experience if one day I wanted to pursue becoming an administrator, which is what my end goal was. So I joined the Hackensack team, I think in 2013, and spent a year and a half there. Started my administration program through NJ Excel. If you're not familiar with that program, it's a rigorous program that is completed over 15 to 18 months. It's instructed by superintendents of the state, principals of the state. It's a fast track program. So people in Hackensack knew that that's what I was pursuing, and unfortunately they didn't have any opportunities there at the time. But there was a connection that I made through Twitter and also running one of the first New Jersey Ed Camps with a gentleman that worked on the board with me for Ed Camp. He worked in a school system where my previous principal's wife worked together, and he knew that I was pursuing an administrative position. Everything just kind of worked out, and that's how I landed a position in Newark. And I was an administrator there for 4 years. I'm not sure if you looked over my resume, but my actual title in Newark was CIO, Chief Innovation Officer, which was a title that was created by former Superintendent Cammie Anderson. And the goal was for people who held the title of CIO to one day take over her vision and mission to become a principal at another school. Since then, she no longer is a superintendent. It went to Chris Cerf, and now back to local control with Roger Leone. And I had a great 4 years experience. There's nothing I can say against Newark Public Schools, it really allowed me to spring forward into just the responsibilities of being an effective leader, and knowing that I'm just continuing to grow in this new position, should I be approved. It's going to be a challenge. I'm so used to stepping into the classrooms and working with students. This is going to be a little different. I just hope that I'm not completely removed from the classroom, because children's my passion. I didn't leave the classroom because I didn't want to be a teacher. I just wanted to impact more lives. So that's why I became an administrator. So I'm hoping that with this new role, again, should I be approved, I don't want to lose touch of where I came from and why I started in education. Personally, like Mr. Divino said, yes, my husband and I moved to Springfield 2 years ago, and we wanted to find something that was similar to where we grew up, and that was Secaucus, New Jersey, where you probably heard my accent from, strong Hudson County accent. So we landed in Springfield. We did our due diligence and looked at the research of the school system, and it just felt, like I said in my interview, Springfield felt like home. It didn't feel that far away from Secaucus. It's close-knit, family-oriented, which is what we were looking for our children. So I do have a 3-year-old. He'll be 3 on Saturday. So we started our small family here, and then it just grew. Like Mr. Divino said, a little girl came on July 31st. So, we're just happy to be part of the community here. I love going to the concerts on the lawn. I try to join as many family Facebook groups that are on, within our community, just so I can just prepare myself how I can be invested in the community, even prior to having my children in the school system. So it's just an opportunity that I really am humbled and appreciative to be a part of this team. So I just thank you, and if anybody has any questions that they would like to ask, I'd be happy to answer them. Hope I gave a good background.
I think that's great. Thank you very
You're
much. Happy to meet you, and
Yes.
again, without prejudging the votes, wish you all the best with the new baby and the
Thank
new
you.
position. New parent may be the only person who has time to read through the entire policy
Well, I
manual
made sure
as
I
you're
did
up in the
that
middle of the
prior
night.
to the 31st. It's just who I am. I like to know what I'm getting myself into. I have to. I'm not just, you have to make sure you're purchasing a good product, and I need to make sure that I have what I need, what I can bring to Springfield Public Schools. So I need to know whatever I can prior to getting involved officially.
Very good. Well, if nobody has any questions, thank you very much. We
You're
appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
And don't worry, you'll have plenty of staff development and making sure that you stay in contact with those classrooms. So that is the superintendent's report.
Thank you. I move to accept and approve the superintendent's report as presented.
Moved by Mr. Miller, seconded by Mrs. Gamarikian. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. The superintendent's report is accepted and approved. Public input on agenda items. Mrs. Kelly is also a member of the public in addition to being on the agenda. She's the only member of the public here, but if you have anything else you'd like to address, now's the time. If not, we will move on to the business portion of the meeting. Mr. Donner, will you call finance, please?
I second.
Moved by Mr. Donner, seconded, and the assist to Mr. Miller. Any discussion on these 5 items? All right, Mr. Clark, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Donner?
Yes.
Mrs. Gamarikian? Yes. Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Rubin? Yes. Mrs. Saha? Yes. Mrs. Turnbull? Yes. And Mr. Silverstein?
Yes, motions pass. Hang on one.
Let me ask her. Excuse me.
Okay.
I wanted to make sure, yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, Mr. Miller, school government.
Okay, I'd like to move items 1 through 3, as well as 5 through 8, with a roll call vote.
All right, moved by Mr. Miller, seconded by Mrs. Gamarikian. Just under discussion, Mr. Davino or Mr. Clark, do you guys want to take us through item 8 and where we are and
I'll let Mr. Davino go ahead and do that.
what that's going to mean?
That's the Apple.
Basically, this is the Apple refresh. At the end of the third year, we have negotiated a new contract, 5-year lease purchase for new laptops.
I'm almost positive.
The cost is a little bit above where we've been at, but that's encompassed in several factors. Factor one is that the new laptops will be 13-inch MacBook Airs instead of 11-inch. They'll all be 13-inch MacBook Airs. They are, for the first time, we're getting brand-new product. So this is not end-of-life product or a product that's been working. They're actually coming off the production lines right now. So we're getting brand-new product, plus we're getting an additional, Matt, was it 150?
I thought it was 135. That number comes to mind, but I don't recall.
We have an additional 135 to 150 students more that we need to provide laptops because of the size of the grades moving up.
That's including staff. You're redoing the staff.
Yes.
That's why you did it.
No, but the increase is due primarily to the number of additional students.
No. That's because we typically don't refresh with
I,
staff. But okay.
I do know that there's additional students in the mix. That's what Daniela laid out for me. And we've got a significant number of machines, the additional machines that will be held for, because of the nature of some of the work that some of our students are doing in video and in virtual reality and some of those things that they're doing. We have a number of machines of a higher level of memory so that based upon students that are in a program and a class that will need to utilize a higher level of memory, we will swap out their machines for the higher level machine for that period of time that they're in that course, so that we can accommodate future memory requirements of programs over the next 3 to 4 years. With some of the advances that we're seeing, particularly with virtual reality and some of the issues that, and Scott can inform you as to some of the things that his own son has experienced in stitching and putting these things together. The amount of memory and the power of the machine impacts how quickly and how easily it gets done. And so rather than sending them to labs or things of that nature, because of our size, we have the ability to swap out machines for kids in a specific course when that's necessary and make them available for the kids to be working individually. That was one of the recommendations, by the way, that came from our kids. As I discussed with them, so, okay, you guys went through this whole thing, you made these videos, you did all this wonderful stuff. What can we do to make it better? Well, the first one was better camera. We got them better cameras. The second one was improve the workability of the machine by getting higher memory, et cetera, et cetera. The shortcoming of Apple's MacBook Airs is that they're not individually upgradable. the way we used to be able to say, okay, we'll just purchase memory for X number of machines and put it in. And we don't want to go to MacBook Pros. It's just not worth the extra expense for that. And so the solution is purchase some additional machines and have them ready to be able to swap out for kids, et cetera.
And I assume that that will be not just for folks working on video, but I would expect some of the engineering courses might
Absolutely.
require those at times.
Yes.
And as we add more from Project
Yeah,
Lead the Way.
and that's why we have
Yeah.
about 100 of the machines are upgraded to address Project Lead the Way courses, engineering courses, both middle and high school, and kids that take video and other. We have a sufficient number to be able to address those needs on a class-by-class basis.
Okay, just to clarify before, when you said that these are new machines, not end of life, we've always had new machines, but they were machines that were bought towards the end of the life cycle of that particular model versus ones that, this one I happen to know is hot off the presses because I was in your office the day you heard about them, and our Apple rep hadn't heard that they had announced these machines yet when you reached out. So I know this is something that's come together relatively recently. But do we have just a sense of comparison of what we were paying under the lease versus?
Yes, we're up a little bit, but as Mr. Davino mentioned, we are getting an additional 135 computers.
Right.
So we're going from 1450, we're going from 1315 to 1450. We'll sell the old fleet to go ahead and offset one of our future payments, and we'll roll in that fifth year. So we're going to see approximately about a 50,000, and it's really about a 45,000 annually addition. But we also added in other components. So let's not forget that we added in the outer shells,
Covers.
the covers to go ahead, and we had a few in the new one, yeah.
In the new.
Yeah,
Yes.
in that price.
And are we
yes.
going back-
Covers are included.
Are we
Yeah,
going
the
back to
covers
the
are
old style
Are they
No.
hard
green?
shells
Are they plastic?
versus the ones that they had last year? Do you know?
They're from the same company, but they're a different product.
Okay, good.
We're hoping that it's upgraded. We'll see.
Yeah.
But I think the manner in which it connects to the rim of the computer is a little more substantive.
Good.
And it has holes on the bottom for heat escaping.
Ventilation.
A couple of things like that. I think I would call it upgraded.
Yeah, I would too, based on the product.
Yeah, I think it's an upgraded product as well.
Good.
So we're getting covers for all those machines as well. That's in the price.
And timing-wise, similar to the last refresh where the kids will start with the current crop of computers and then
No.
they'll be rolled out?
No.
You're gonna be able to get
The
these done?
current, because we have a third-party company, they're gonna be coming in, hopefully working with our Apple geniuses in, we're
Great now.
kind of guaranteed a certain number, but I think we're gonna get higher. And once they grade them out, the machines will be gone. We're expecting, Apple is saying 4 to 5 days, since we'll let them know tomorrow that this passed board approval. They are saying 4 to 5 days for us to get the new machines. My expectation, Matt and I both said, we'll give them 1 to 2 weeks. And then our staff will work on imaging the machines with our own image, not Apple's image. Unfortunately, the new operating system will not be on these machines because it will not be released until sometime in the fall. We can upgrade to that if we want to, but we're currently in the process of evaluating the programs we use and their compatibility with the new operating system. So Tech Department is currently working on finalizing the image that we'll put on these machines. The first rollout will go to staff so that we can have them for Staff Development Day and getting them ready to set up for their classes, et cetera. My expectation is if we get delivery within that 1 to 2 week period, distribution to the students should start upon their return to school.
So I think you said you were gonna sell the old fleet? What did you?
Yeah, they're going, we're not selling to the
We're not to the
public.
public.
The way we did last
Right, that was
Yeah.
my question.
Yeah, it's going to a third-party vendor, because they'll take all the machines and give us a price based upon the quality level, but
Well, someone
I
asked
want-
me about it recently, so.
I want
clarify.
our Apple geniuses to be working alongside them in the grading of the machines, so that we get the highest possible dollar return.
Mike, are we gonna have a spot, like last time what we did is we took some of the old laptops and brought them to the, like, to Walton, some of the lower schools.
No, all,
These are all getting sold, we're not. gonna
everything's
swap out.
going, we're not, everything is going. These are the old ones, they're all going.
But we're replacing
Are we
everything that's
replacing the
going.
old?
You're
Yes.
replacing all.
So-
Well, plus 135 more.
So every laptop that's out, every laptop that's out there now is being replaced. So even the ones that got pushed down,
Even the ones in the
those will be
laptop cards?
replaced plus others.
I'm talking about the ones. in the
Not
cards.
the elementary school.
No,
Oh,
not
okay.
down there.
Those are staying.
Those
Those are
are
staying.
staying.
Okay.
Those are
We're
staying.
That
only
was the part that we were
talking-
trying
We're only
to.
talking about students,
Six
staff,
staff.
12.
et cetera.
Six through 12.
6 through 12,
every staff member.
and every staff member. Yes, every staff member will get a new computer. Which is something else we haven't done, as Matt mentioned earlier. So every staff member, every student will be getting a 13-inch MacBook Air for September.
All right, great.
I did have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Our laptop covers, the ones that we're gonna get, what's the cost of each one? Is it going to be ridiculous?
No,
Because
You're not asking what it's costing to purchase, you're asking what you're gonna have to pay when your child destroys it.
well, that's what I'm
No,
asking, because that's a completely different, I don't have a record of what we paid last time, and
the principals will receive that once I have the final
so we
piece
don't have
from
on here
tech.
like what we're
I
really
haven't
paying
gone
for
ahead.
each one.
Oh, yeah, I do.
Well, that's what I wanna know, yeah,
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 off the top of my head, no, I don't have.
Okay.
Off the top of my head, I'll give it to you though.
that'd be great,
All right,
thanks.
yeah.
Wanna know, cause I thought
You
that was
wanna
a
know
lot
on
we
the
paid last
laptop
time
too?
for them.
That way the kids can start putting their
That
allowance
seems a
away
little
now, is that the?
ridiculous, how much we paid last time for them.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna
No,
want
if he
that.
destroys that, that's on its own, just as
Yeah.
the laptop cover is, but $50 for a laptop cover, kind of
And,
ridiculous.
and as we have suggested previously, people should get insurance. It's cheap, it's easily available, and you can put all of your digital products,
For all
your own personal items could all go on the same policy.
$2,000 policy.
And it probably costs you around $50.
You did.
It's worth it.
Yeah, and you throw your laptop and your phones on.
Oh, it's worth it.
Exactly.
All right, any other questions on that? Or any of the items on, any of the 7 items on this, agenda, this vote?
We're good.
All right, Mr. Clark?
Mr. Donner?
Yes.
Mrs. Gamarikian? Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Rubin? Mrs. Saha? Mrs. Turnbull? Mr. Silverstein?
Yes, motion's passed. Thank you. Mr. Miller?
Yeah, congratulations, Ms. Kelly.
Congratulations. Yes, thank you.
I would also like to move item 4 under school government with a roll call vote.
Moved by Mr. Miller, second by Ms. Gamarikian. Any discussion? Mr. Clark?
Mr. Donner?
Yes.
Mrs. Gamarikian? Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Rubin? Mrs. Saha? Mrs. Turnbull? Mr. Silverstein?
Yes, motion passes. Thank you. Mrs. Rubin, Buildings and Grounds.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Rubin, seconded by Mr. Miller. Mr. Clark, can you take us through?
Yes. Okay, the first 4 have to do with James Caldwell School. We have the building envelope, the 2 walls, I believe it's the west and the north wall. We have done the saturation test numerous locations and in numerous times. Unfortunately, the saturation test, hopefully it'll go ahead and absorb, the brick will absorb. That's not what's happening. Our brick is so porous, it's just going right through the building. So that's why you have the first change order. First change order is to go ahead and replace all the brick on those two walls. On the second change order, and that is because one of our board members saw it and we didn't notice it during the spec writing, but it will help go ahead and let additional light into that gymnasium. So we are going to uncover 3 of the existing openings and put the windows back in because they were bricked up. So that's the second change order. By doing these change orders, it's going to extend the timeline, and that's going to take us out to May, unless we have a really nice winter. They'll continue to work right through, but they will go ahead and push, and they'll have everything secure, so we won't have to worry about that. There won't be any problems with the building being secure with the brick, that they are able to go ahead and the grout work.
So with those windows that are now going to be in the gym at Caldwell, do you know if we have plans for movable window treatments? Because
That's what they are. That's what they're going in with. They're going with
Good.
so that they can be opened.
Good.
You actually had 4, just so you know. I mean, heck, might as well give you a little history. There actually were 4 windows, but because one of the windows right in the middle, that's where the basketball rim is.
Right.
It's bolted right out to the back, right out to the outside.
That could be why they
The
removed the
exterior.
window.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but they ended up blocking up all of them. It didn't make sense. So no, well that'll stay blocked up. That's going to stay brick.
No, your question is the other ones on.
Oh,
on
the other
sides.
ones. Oh yeah, we'll have that protective barrier. That's fine.
So,
On the inside.
with the timeline, is there any impact on the use of the space?
No, they
at
will
all?
still
There
be
won't
using
be
it.
anything.
No impact on the use of the space. It's just a matter of how much longer it's going to take.
Because I know currently
Even
there's
the blacktop.
scaffolding and such.
Yeah,
up there.
well, the blacktop's not out on the scaffolding. I mean,
There is
the
scaffolding on
scaffolding-
the blacktop side.
by the playground,
Yeah, there sure is.
then they must have moved it because they're not doing that wall. You know, that's not one of the walls, right?
I know there's scaffolding there. That's
They must have, well,
Maybe they're staging it.
that
not
maybe
not
where,
the playground side, but the side where there's still recreational area on the. So the playground's on this side. This side had scaffolding up at some point this
You
summer.
talking about the side by Keeler Street?
Yeah, by Keeler, the one facing Keeler, exactly.
Yep.
yeah, but there will be scaffolding there.
There
That
will.
scaffolding's been there all last year because they had the opening. That hasn't been really been moved.
Okay, so that didn't affect the recreational
No.
activity
Mm-mm.
there.
No,
Okay, cool.
no. That's the back of the library.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay,
Library,
yeah,
exactly
yeah.
right.
No, we should be good there. Where we may have a little bit of difficulty is during the election, and that is entering in and out. But we'll work with the town and see if they can come up with something that'll suffice. The Walton partial roof, that's ongoing. We actually have a meeting, Mr. Noor, myself, and the architect on Wednesday, so we'll go up. But it is moving. It should be. Right now, I'm being told it will be done on time. Just like that's the last payment, and that's the item number 6 here at the high school. That also, and unfortunately, some of you, when you walked in, you saw some of the debris that had fallen off of the roof that was in the front. That'll be cleaned up shortly. They're about 2/3 of the way done here at the high school, so I'm not worried about the high school being done. The high school is going to be done on time.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Please call the roll.
Mr. Donner?
Yes.
Mrs. Gamarikian? Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Rubin? Mrs. Saha? Mrs. Turnbull? Mr. Silverstein?
Yes. All right. Motion's passed. Thank you. Back to open public session. If anybody were here, this would be the time you'd come up and address any item to the board. For those of you watching at home or on the beach, we encourage you to come to the meeting and take part. New business.
Couple items.
Go ahead.
I would, this is a motion, right? Technically?
Yes, so, yeah.
A resolution? Okay, so I have a resolution. Whereas the Springfield Education Association has filed a grievance on behalf of unnamed SEA members pursuant to Article 6 of the agreement between the association and the board. And whereas pursuant to Article 6 of the agreement, the grievance was not informally resolved. And whereas the grievance was presented to the superintendent, who denied the grievance at level 1. And whereas the grievance was then presented to the board. And whereas the board has carefully considered the grievance in all relevant documents presented, now therefore be it resolved that the board denies the grievance and authorizes the board secretary to notify the association of its determination and to forward a copy of its determination to the superintendent.
And you're moving approval.
I so move approval.
Moved by Mr. Miller, seconded by Mrs. Turnbull. Sorry. Any discussion on that resolution? All right. Need a roll call? Or?
Yes.
Yeah, can we call the
Mr.
roll?
Donner?
Yes.
Mrs. Gamarikian? Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Rubin? Mrs. Saha?
Yes.
Mrs. Turnbull?
Yes.
Mr. Silverstein?
Yes, motion passes, or the resolution passes, I should say. Mr. Miller?
Do we need a roll call on the second one
Yeah,
as well?
do that, yeah.
I'd like to move the following with a roll call vote. I move that the board approves the settlement agreement with employee 1570.
Moved by Mr. Miller, seconded by Ms. Gamarikian. Any discussion? All right, Mr. Clark?
Mr. Donner?
Yes.
Mrs. Gamarikian?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Rubin?
Yes.
Mrs. Saha?
Yes.
Mrs. Turnbull?
Yes.
And Mr. Silverstein?
Yes, motion passes. Anybody else have any other new business? All right, any old business?
Did you want to mention the slate for the election in
Yeah,
November?
yeah, we can do that. Let me do that real quick. We have 3 candidates that have filed petitions for the upcoming November election. And of course, it's not in order. No, I don't have
No, I
that
don't think
yet.
they're drawn yet, have
Yeah, I think it's this week. Yeah.
Doesn't matter, there's 3 candidates for 3
Yeah.
spots, right?
And, whoop.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been.
You're number 2.
Okay, here we go. There are 3 candidates for 3 positions, 3-year position for the Board of Education. The first is Scott Silverstein, second is Hillary Turnbull, and the third is Meredith Murphy. And they will be on the ballot, not in that order, possibly in that order. So we'll see once that's drawn. But you have 3 candidates for 3 positions. Not bad. We're in good shape.
All right, any other new business, old business? I think we've got a motion.
Yeah,
And no action.
yeah. I move to suspend the rules of order of business of the regular meeting and adjourn to closed conference session for the reasons, contained in the following. Matters protected by attorney-client privilege as well as personnel. No action will be taken.
Moved by Mr. Miller, seconded by Ms. Gamarikian. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. We are in closed.